We've got a great collection of folks here today. We've been doing this event for the past several years, and this is by far our largest attendance, the largest both pre-registration as well as in the room. And we've got a great mix of state agencies, utilities, municipalities, fleet leaders, industry partners, community organizations, all of the pieces of the puzzle that need to work together to this common goal of extending access to electric transportation and supporting programs that make that possible. Before we get started, there's a bunch of exhibitors and partners that I would like to recognize, and many of them are across the back of the room, and we're hoping you're going to take advantage of talking with those folks as we get through the day, both during the day and then also during our lunch breaks too. But we've got EverSource, National Grid, we've got waves coming to us from the back of the room. Mass EVIP is here, Mass CEC, Leading by Example, Eco Auto, and the Green Energy Consumers Alliance. And these are the folks that are part of the fabric of entities that are trying to advance every day, working so hard to advance transportation electrification across the Commonwealth. Also, following the symposium today, we have the June Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Coordinating Council, the June EVIC meeting is going to be happening from 1 to 3 p.m. today. You do need to be registered for that event. If for some reason you haven't been registered yet, but you would like to attend, not to worry, just please see Fernanda Estrada from our team, and Fernanda's putting her hand up here. She can make sure that you're registered for that event. And she'll be assist you with registration and provide the appropriate sticker for you. As all of us know, an event like this doesn't come together unless a lot of folks contribute to make everything happen that's necessary to move things forward. So I just wanted to recognize some of those folks. So, and please raise your hand if you're in the room or you can hear my voice. So first, Mark Scribner, the Policy Advisor for Transportation and Decarbonization at the Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy. Mark, there's Mark in the back. I know Zach couldn't make it here today, I don't think, but Zach Jenkins, the Western Regional Coordinator, the Green Communities Division at the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources. Zach, thank you so much for all of your work on this. Is Aaron here? Aaron Bostwick, Massive Coordinator and Environmental Analyst for the Bureau of Air and Waste at the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. And then I really want to acknowledge Scotty Nolan, the Lead Communication Strategist to Recharge America. Scotty is over here. Will be supporting us all day. And then Fernanda Estrada, also Fernanda, Lead Communication Strategist for Recharge America. Thank you, Fernanda, for all your work. And as we begin, I do want everybody to know this event is being recorded, and portions of those recordings may be used for additional public-facing work going forward as we try to make sure that everybody has access to these materials. So I wanted to make sure folks are aware of this. So to begin our program, it's really a pleasure to welcome Catherine Antas, the Undersecretary of Decarbonization and Resilience at the Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. Catherine leads the Commonwealth's efforts to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, while helping communities, infrastructure, and natural resources prepare for the impacts of the changing climate. Prior to joining EEA, she served as the Deputy Executive Director for Planning and Sustainability at the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. She has also held leadership roles with Washington D.C.'s Department of Energy and Environment and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Chesapeake Bay Program Office, where she helped advance resilience and environmental policy initiatives. Catherine, thank you for joining us. Please help me in welcoming Catherine to the stage. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Kirk. I'm a little shorter than you. I want to start by giving you a big round of applause for getting us all here today. So thank you so much to you and the whole Recharge team. And I also, again, need to thank the EEA team who's made today possible, in particular, Mark, also Melissa Middleman, Katie Gronendijk, Daniel Kerner, who are all here helping to make this happen, and also many of our Department of Energy Resource, Department of Environmental Protection, and CEC colleagues. I also want to thank all of our presenters and panelists and moderators. I'm really excited for the conversations conversations that are going to be happening today. And most importantly, for all of you for being here. I was last at one of these events a couple years ago, and I don't remember the exact head count, but it feels like it's roughly twice as many people, 50% more people. So this is really great. I'm really excited that we are bringing together municipal and regional leaders, charging infrastructure providers, developers, and installers, fleet operators and managers, and other businesses and institutions who want to explore and adopt vehicle electrification, our utility and grid stakeholders, our nonprofit and advocacy organizations, auto dealerships, and then, of course, the state agency staff who are here. So, Massachusetts' progress on transportation electrification depends on the leadership, the innovation, and the collaboration of all of us here in this room and the organizations that we represent. Today is not just about sharing information, it's about learning from one another and building the partnerships we need to move forward together. Transportation remains the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in Massachusetts, and meeting our climate commitments requires transforming how people and goods are moving throughout our communities. So transportation electrification, though, as you know, it's more than just reducing emissions. It's about building a transportation system that is cleaner, more affordable, more reliable, more resilient, and honestly more fun too for any of us who know from driving electric vehicles. It's about helping residents and businesses save money on fuel and maintenance and operating costs over time. It's about ensuring every community can participate in and benefit from the clean energy transition, including breathing cleaner air as well. And it's about positioning Massachusetts to remain a leader in innovation and economic opportunity. The Healy Driscoll administration continues to prioritize transportation as a key component of our climate strategy. And achieving our goals requires more than just putting more EVs on the road. It requires building a charging network that people can depend on. It's about having an electric grid that's ready for future demand. It's supporting fleets as they navigate the complex transition decisions. And it means ensuring electrification remains accessible, affordable, and equitable. It's grounded in collaboration among government, industry, utilities, local communities, and consumers. Massachusetts has made significant progress in recent years. Our public DC fast charging deployment has exceeded our original 2025 goals, and we now have more than 10,000 public charging ports across level 2 and DC fast charging locations. Charging infrastructure is becoming increasingly visible and accessible across communities throughout the state. Residents, businesses, municipalities, and fleets are continuing to adopt electric vehicles and charging solutions. These accomplishments are the results of the investments, the partnerships, and the hard work from the many organizations and individuals represented here today. So while there's more work ahead, these milestones demonstrate what is possible when public and private partners work together. At the same time, we know the path forward is not without challenges and not without unexpected twists and turns in our journey. We have seen the immediate effect of federal actions in EV sales data in Massachusetts. You look at the numbers and you see the impacts of what's happening at the federal level. At the same time, other countries are surging ahead. So we must continue to scale vehicle electrification and charging infrastructure. This is something that we can control, and that's a major factor when making the decision about whether to switch to electric vehicles. With continued collaboration and innovation and information sharing through the summit today, through the EVIC meeting later on this afternoon, we can continue to help guide that future together. In Massachusetts, we have intentionally pursued a broad and multi-pronged strategy towards electric vehicle adoption. We have programs such as More EV, the state's vehicle rebate program, to help residents and businesses and nonprofits and public entities afford electric vehicles. We have our Mass EVIP investments to continue supporting charging deployment across a variety of cases and community types. Our utilities are helping prepare the grid and support charging deployment through make-ready investments and related programs. And we have demonstration and pilot projects spearheaded by Mass CEC to generate valuable lessons that help inform future investments and policy decisions. This comprehensive approach allows Massachusetts to identify barriers, test solutions, and scale what works. So we are so lucky today to hear directly from so many of these program leaders and learn from their experiences. This next chapter of transportation electrification will be shaped by the conversations that are taking place here today. Fleet operators and charging station site hosts need opportunities to learn from their peers who have already begun the transition. Municipal leaders need practical examples and proven approaches. Utilities, charging providers, and policy makers need ongoing feedback about how these projects are going for those who are implementing them on the ground. And events like this help turn those plans and projects and ideas into action. They help us to identify the challenges early, share lessons more broadly, celebrate what's working, and build stronger partnerships. So my ask to all of you is to actively engage throughout the day. Ask hard questions, share experiences, and build new connections. Because transportation electrification is ultimately a collective effort. Massachusetts has the expertise, the partnerships, and the commitment needed to build a cleaner, more affordable, and honestly more fun to drive transportation future. Thank you for your participation and leadership.
Yeah, Catherine, thank you so much for those remarks and for the leadership that EEA has shown on these topics for years and years. This notion that it takes many, many pieces of the puzzle to advance transportation electrification is so true, and it's always been a crucial part of all the work in Massachusetts to bring partners together. And we see it today that people come out and are willing to collaborate and have the conversations necessary to move things forward. And in that spirit, our next session will focus on the programs and initiatives currently underway in Massachusetts and will be organized today through panel discussions. And so our first guide for our conversation today would be Mark Scribner, the Policy Advisor for Transportation Decarbonization at the Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. Mark brings extensive experience in transportation electrification and has worked across state government, utility programs, regional energy organizations to advance EV adoption, fleet electrification, and charging infrastructure throughout Massachusetts. Prior to his current tenure, he served as Electric Transportation Program Manager for the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources, leading by example program, and previously led transportation electrification initiatives at Energy New England. So, Mark, please join me in welcoming Mark. Thanks for coming on, Mark.
Thank you, Kirk, and thank you all for coming here today. Really great to see some old familiar faces and lots of new faces, and really excellent representation across the whole EV ecosystem here today. And as Kirk mentioned, we're going to be talking about the important state programs and initiatives from incentives to technical support and other areas, and with a heavy focus on charging infrastructure, of course. The area that, as Undersecretary Antos mentioned, we do have a lot of control over here in Massachusetts. So I'm going to start by providing you an introduction to the Massachusetts Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Coordinating Council. I'm not going to call it that. I'm going to call it EVIC here going forward, the abbreviation, a little easier to spit out. And give you an intro to EV charging and program initiatives through my colleagues who will be joining up on the stage here. And so where we are and a bit about EVIC. So EVIC was established in 2022. It serves to recommend strategies that will enable these key four areas: equitable, interconnected, accessible, and reliable when it comes to electric vehicle charging infrastructure, and developing that charging network, both private and publicly owned charging stations. And a second assessment from EVIC, and I'll get in a little more about the assessments in a minute, was filed on August 11th, 2025. Massachusetts has made considerable progress when it comes to charging infrastructure. There's been some really great news around that. The total number of public charging ports now exceeds 10,000 as of April of this year, and ports increased drastically between 2023 and May 2025. And the public EV deployment increased also 50%, specifically in 2023 to 2024. So we see that our goals that we set forth, the public fast charging, is actually really surged recently and has exceeded our goals through August 1st of last year. And when we compare how Massachusetts is doing to other states, that's also really good news. Massachusetts ranking 4th in EV chargers per capita, and actually ranking number 1, even greater than, say, California, where conventionally it's thought, there's a lot of support for EVs, ranking number 1 in charger density. And there's a lot more work to do. The assessments are biannual assessments every 2 years out in August. So the EVIC third assessment will be due August 11th, and we're already getting started on that work this summer. So we want you to stay engaged. More info at the end of today's section of presentations, and to learn more and get involved in that process. So when we take a brief overview here, we're going to get into some more details with my colleagues of the existing state EV charging related programs. When we look at EV charging deployment at scale, the Massachusetts Electric Vehicle Incentive Program, which we want to raise more awareness about, we're going to call it Mass EVIP for short, which is run by Mass DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, is one program providing incentives for EV charging infrastructure. The investor-owned utilities also have their own programs that are ratepayer-based, Eversource, National Grid, and Unitil. And let's not forget about also we have 41 municipal light plant that serve territories, about 15% of the market, and many of them have their own programs focused on both charging incentives and actual commercial and residential incentives for EV charging. When we're testing and scaling novel models, that's where Mass CEC, or Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, really shines in the work that they do. Most recently, they've been working on some on-street charging solutions. You'll hear more about the Ride Clean Mass charging hubs, and I want to give a shout out to my colleague Elijah Sinclair, who I just heard on the radio this morning. And this is something we need more of. We need more marketing and awareness to raise awareness. He was on the radio talking about the Ride Clean hubs. There we go. And Act for All is a program you'll hear more about where innovative ideas are funded through Mass CEC. We're also addressing customer barriers, driver barriers, and fleet barriers. And Mass CEC is also doing a lot of that work with its Mass Fleet Advisor program you'll hear more about. And the investor-owned utilities also working on fleet advisory services historically. And finally, about optimizing grid use and infrastructure use, there are managed charging programs. Charging an EV at night is easier on the grid, and so this is something we want to encourage in all utility territories. And the transportation electrification plan process is done through something called Section 103, and we're working on that, and you'll hear more about that in the afternoon. We hope that you will all stay for the EVIC meeting this afternoon with a presentation from the electric distribution companies, the utilities. So public funding still remains an important tool. In the future, we would like to see it start to phase down. Over 2/3 of public EV chargers have received funding from either state or utility programs. And Massachusetts does want to see a self-sustaining EV infrastructure. The private sector is doing a lot of great work in this area. So where we hope to go with EV charger deployment, although there are significant headwinds with any type of new technology, including federal program and investment tax credit rollbacks, I'm sure you're all aware of, and market and cost uncertainties, we really need to increase the deployment in Massachusetts, and EVIC assessments are one way we identify barriers and opportunities for Massachusetts. And 4 categories that we identified in the last assessment were being more strategic, and this is minimizing overlap of eligibility, for example, for incentives, improving customer communications for projects that are being developed, targeting high-value DC fast charging opportunities, and existing funds, are being utilized on intended use cases. We want to improve efficiency of existing programs by removing some common barriers, and be more proactive for grid planning and for future EV charging, and seek alternate funding sources. And finally, I say last but not least, as an EV driver myself for over 14 years now, we want to continue to significantly improve the EV charging experience. We want a lot of right first time, which is a term I learned when I worked in biopharma, right first time installs of EV charging, and we want success first time when EV drivers show up at those charging stations. And just, just like any new technology, there are going to be some bumps along the road, and we're continuing to apply those lessons learned. Our second assessment, as I mentioned, was out last August, and the assessment included how important it is to advance EV charging to meet our transportation goals by supporting electric vehicle adoption, where we are at deploying EV charging infrastructure, and where we hope to go, and how we plan to get there, so the strategic actions that are needed. And there's a series of 32 recommendations in that report. We can't implement them all tomorrow, but we've been thinking strategically about what we can implement in a phased approach, and maybe what we should pass on for future analysis. And so Mass DEP, as part of the EVIC work, also announced $46 million additional dollars to support the strategic build out of EV chargers. 16 million of that is going to EVIP itself for the existing public and private categories you'll hear about in my colleague Ehring's presentation. 10 million to specifically support medium and heavy duty charging hubs, and 20 million for chargers along what we call secondary highway corridors and other high value community type opportunities. So here's a map where you can see more outlined about some of the potential program gaps in coverage. And we know about public level 2 charging and DC fast chargers and how they serve different needs for drivers. Level 2 often being the common way that people charge overnight, or as an opportunity where you're going to be somewhere for multiple hours. DC fast charging, your charging will hopefully be measured in minutes, and they complement each other well. However, specifically expanding DC fast charging along secondary corridors, we consider essential to address the future charging demand, accessibility, and range anxiety. And there's that word range anxiety. I'm sure you've heard it. And I love to try to change the conversation more to something of a more modern term, which I call charging confidence, which is where we want to get. So let's use positive language. So less about today's vehicles have 300 miles plus range. Oftentimes, it's not about having enough range. It's about having the confidence when you arrive somewhere where you really do need to charge. Again, that you're going to have a right first time install, and you're going to have a successful charge first time. So the second assessment also recommends prioritizing fast charging along these secondary corridors, expanding community charging options for residents without off-street parking, and you'll hear a lot more about that today, what's already in the works in that. And also, we've got our eye on another area where we have a lot of control over, which is supporting fleet electrification. And our second panel today will talk a lot about deploying medium and heavy duty fleet charging infrastructure to ensure, this is truly a chicken and the egg problem for fleets. They need to get their infrastructure in the ground or have some way to charge their vehicles before they can start transitioning their fleet. So we encourage you to visit the EVIC website to learn more specifically about the second assessment. When we talk about resources, that was multiple recommendations in the assessment talked about developing specific resources that either don't exist for Massachusetts, or some of these are very innovative and don't exist really, as we found, anywhere in the national or international EV ecosystem. Some are specific to Massachusetts. We are already getting into work on these. And again, in this afternoon's EVIC, there'll be a presentation specifically on 2 of these resources from my colleague Allison from MAPC. And those are the Massachusetts Right to Charge Guide, which is tied directly to legislation which gives condo owners and residents in historic districts certain rights around installing EV charging. We think that will be valuable. Some cities and towns have already done work in this area, but we want something statewide. And something that's really been near and dear to me over the years has to do with getting proper signage at sites, again, right first time, and enforcing parking while charging only. We are trying to get away from using the term anti-icing, for obvious reasons. And we're talking about EV parking while charging only is what's required. And there also is a law that supports that. So you'll hear more about that this afternoon. Two additional guides we want to launch in 2027 are around EV charging demand charges, which has to do with when for example, a DC fast charging station at peak times, there's an additional charge that can show up on the customer's bill. There is demand relief for that from all the major utilities, and we want to raise more awareness about how commercial site hosts can ensure they have the best rate plan. And finally, an EV charging zoning and permitting guide that will help not only municipalities, but any site hosts as they're developing their first or their next EV charging sites and how they can work on streamlining that process. So more information, as I said, will be presented this afternoon on those first two. So to summarize what our state EV charging priorities are, the state's priorities and strategy are more important than just forecasting future charging infrastructure, as the amount of charging infrastructure is uncertain and dependent on many factors. So state and utility programs should be focusing on, again, the highest value, particularly for Massachusetts drivers, where state and utility programs can have the greatest impact. And in general, this means targeting both public and fleet charging infrastructure, and that's why we chose these topics to concentrate with our panels this morning. EV charging opportunities that maximize emissions reduction as another area we want to target. So not just thinking about number of stations and number of vehicles, but how does that translate into actual greenhouse gas and other emissions reductions? And support multiple high-value use cases. Sometimes we call this mixed use, where a station is not just for rideshare drivers, it also serves the local community. It's not just for a medium duty and heavy duty. It might also have some other use for light duty vehicles. And so also the equitable build out of charging infrastructure. Left to its own devices, the private sector might be concentrating EV charging where the existing EV drivers are adopting in high volumes. That doesn't ensure equitable access for folks maybe who live out here further in Western Massachusetts or in other areas. So we're razor focused on how we ensure that customers in certain areas or might historically have limited access. This includes rural communities, but also in environmentally concerned communities, multi-unit dwellings, anybody who doesn't have off-street parking, and of course, medium and heavy-duty vehicles. So I appreciate your attention to the intro here about EVIC. There's going to be lots more about EVIC, and I just wanted to remind folks that if you haven't signed up for the afternoon session, it's not too late to do that. You can see someone from the registration table and get added on to be able to attend this afternoon's event. So I'd like to invite my colleague Morgan Bowler from Massachusetts DOER, which is short for Department of Energy Resources, Leading by Example, or LBE for short, who's going to tell you all about the More EV program, which provides rebates for light duty and medium and heavy duty vehicles. Welcome, Morgan.
Great. Thanks, Mark. So I'm going to talk about the State Electric Vehicle Rebate Program. I help manage it within the Department of Energy Resources and the LBE office with my colleague Nicole Apri and the director of our division, Eric Friedman. So really quickly, I'm going to give a background of the More EV program, and then I'm going to go through the various offerings we provide through that program. So I do want to mention that More EV has been around since 2014, so it's a bit of an old program. Since then, we've gone through different rebate values, a different range of offerings for PHEVs, battery electric vehicles, things like that. But in 2023, the program underwent considerable changes, and we also formalized some of the program rules into regulations. Some of those considerable changes we made was creating a trade-in rebate adder, creating 2 income qualifying rebates, our More EV Used rebate and our More EV Plus adder. And we also established a point of sale program for the light duty program so that applicants could receive the rebate when they're purchasing or leasing their electric vehicle instead of having to apply afterwards. So all of these additions help to significantly increase our program participation. In this slide, you'll see to the left, we start in 2014, and up until 2022, we have a bit of a, common growth. The numbers are a little bit stable, except for some activity in 2018. And then after the regs were promulgated around 2023, we see a spike in program participation, and we really see the program take off, and people really start taking advantage and utilizing our rebates. There was admittedly, after the loss of the federal tax credit, a little bit of a dip in later 2025, but in more recent months, we have seen participation begin to rebound a bit. So now I want to go through the different rebate offerings. I'll start with the light duty rebates, which have two base offerings. These, again, are available post-purchase or at the point of sale at participating dealerships. So you have to make sure they're participating in the point of sale program. So the first rebate offering we have is for new vehicles. It's a $3,500 rebate, and it's available to Massachusetts residents, businesses, or nonprofits. And the one thing I want to note about this is that it has a purchase price for the vehicle of $55,000. So you just need to make sure that the sales price of the vehicle is not greater than $55,000. For the used vehicle base rebate, it is another $3,500 rebate, but you can apply it to any vehicle that is 2 years or older or hasn't been sold in the last 2 years, as long as that vehicle has a sales price of $40,000 or less. This is, again, one of our income qualifying rebates. So in order to be eligible for this rebate, you do need to be either participating in an income qualifying program, which we have examples to the left of the slide, but there is a much longer list in our guidelines if you'd like to take a look. The other way you could be eligible for this program is by meeting certain income thresholds, which I've also included on the slide. For the light duty program, we also have two optional adders. So these adders can be combined with either of those two base incentives, the new or the used vehicle rebate, in order to potentially receive a total of $6,000 in incentives from the MORI-B program. So the two adders, as I mentioned earlier, is one of our income qualifying offerings, the MORI-B Plus adder. This is a $1,500 adder, and it's for any individual that is eligible through participating in an income qualifying program similar to the used rebate. For this adder, you are not able to prove eligibility through meeting income thresholds. It's only through participation in one of those programs. We also have the trade and rebate adder, which I had mentioned was a new offering in our 2023 reg promulgation. So this is a $1,000 adder, and anybody who is eligible for any of those base rebates and is also trading in an existing internal combustion engine vehicle that is 12 years or older would be eligible for this rebate. Two things that I do want to know about these rebates, because there is a point of sale program in the light duty section. The trade-in rebate is only available post-purchase, so you wouldn't be able to get it at the point of sale. The MORI-B Plus adder is available either post-purchase or at the point of sale, but you do just really want to make sure you're getting that MORI-B Plus adder at the same time as the base rebate. So for example, if you get the used rebate at the point of sale, do not try and apply for the MORI-B Plus adder post-purchase. Make sure you're getting the MORI-B Plus adder at the point of sale as well. And then I just wanted to provide a list of examples of eligible light-duty vehicles on our website. There's a lot more, but I did just want to show folks that we have a range of different makes and models, manufacturers, different vehicle types. So feel free to go take a look at our website and see what models we have available on our eligible vehicles list and what models interest you. Now getting into the pickup in Class 2A/2B program. So this is things like Ford F-150 Lightnings, 4D Transits. This program is only post-purchase. We don't offer these rebates at the point of sale. So there's two offerings through here. There's the base rebate for the pickup truck program, which is a $7,500 rebate. And we've expanded the eligibility for this one so that it includes Massachusetts residents, businesses, and nonprofits like the light duty program. But in addition, we have expanded it to educational institutions like public colleges, universities, or any colleges, as well as local, municipal, and state government departments. So they would be eligible for this rebate offering. The only thing to know about this one is that it also has a purchase price cap, but this is $80,000 instead of the $55,000 or the $40,000. So the vehicle just have to meet that $80,000 price cap. In addition to the base rebate, we also have the MoreV Plus adder. You could add that MoreV Plus adder if you're an eligible applicant to that $7,500 base rebate through this program. And again, as I mentioned, we have a list of eligible vehicles on the website, but it includes things like a Chevy Silverado, Ford E-Transit, Ford F-150 Lightning, things like that. And then finally, I just want to really quickly go over our class 3 through 8 rebates. This is another slightly different application process. It is only post-purchase, but it is a 2-step process. So you really need to be sure that you are applying for a rebate reservation voucher, and that will essentially hold the funds for you in the program before you take delivery of the vehicle. Then once you take delivery of the vehicle and you have already received that signed voucher from DOER, then you would apply to redeem the voucher. So that's just one thing I really want to note and make sure people are aware of. The rebate offerings in this section of the program differ depending on the class of your vehicle. So it starts at a class 3 rebate offering of $15,000 and goes up to a $90,000 rebate for class 8 vehicles. It's the same eligibility for applicants as the pickup truck program, so Massachusetts residents, businesses, nonprofits, educational institutions, and local municipal and state governments. And this one has a purchase price of $2 million or less, and that's for class 3 through 8. So just make sure your class 3 through 8 vehicle is less than $2 million in sales price. This one does not have the MoreV Plus adder as an option to add on to it, but it does have an environmental justice adder. This is basically 10% of the base rebate value. So say you have a class 3 vehicle and you want to add the environmental justice adder onto it, that would essentially be an additional $1,500 of that $15,000 base rebate offering. Any of the above applicants listed there are eligible, but specifically the vehicle has to either be registered in an EJ community or has to be operating at least 50% of the time in an EJ community. So you would be able to prove that through route maps, things like that. Great. And so that is all that I have for you guys today. Happy to take questions over there at my booth. I know we don't have questions today or time for questions today at this panel, but yeah, I'll be sitting in the back and happy to answer any questions about MoreEV. Great. Thank you.
Good job, Morgan. Thanks. Thanks, and thank you, Morgan, for that great overview of the MoreEV rebate program. And in particular, MoreEV is more valuable than ever. As we've seen federal incentives disappear for vehicles, and there's really compelling case that for applying the MoreEV rebates to used light duty vehicles, where already even without incentives, a light duty used EV is really often the cheapest car that you can own, even compared to a gasoline car. So it's very compelling with the fuel and maintenance savings. So next, I'd like to introduce Erin Bostwick from the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, or Mass DEP for short, who's going to share some great information about the Massachusetts, the Mass EVIP program, Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program. And this is also really something we want to raise more awareness about, because it really has been an enabler, particularly for smaller projects where the budget is really constrained to be able to install that first charging infrastructure. So without further ado, thank you, Erin.
Hey, good morning. So thank you, Mark, for laying the table so nicely. And thank you, Morgan, for providing a refresher on MoreEV. Appreciate all of that. As Mark said, my name is Erin Bostwick. I'm with the Mass Department of Environmental Protection Electric Vehicle Incentive Program, or Mass EVIP, as we call it for short. And I'm very excited to be here today with all of you to present our programs and raise some awareness so we can get more applications in the door and more electric vehicle charging stations out onto the state. So overall, we have 4 programs. One unique thing about our program relative to many of the DEP grant programs is that these are open rolling programs that are always accepting applications. So right now, we have one program, the Fleet Vehicle Program, that funds the acquisition of plug-in, so fully electric or plug-in hybrid electric vehicles by public fleets and then 3 programs that fund the acquisition of level 2 and level 1 up to 36 kilowatt charging stations for a variety of locations across the state. And those programs are the Workplace and Fleet Charging Program, the Multi-Unit Dwelling and Campus Program, and the Public Access Charging Program. All 3 of these programs will fund up to $50,000 towards the installation of EV charging infrastructure at their various locations per address statewide. Quickly, I'll get into the Mass EVIP Fleet Program. As stated, this one funds publicly owned fleet vehicles. So if you have a public fleet, whether that is a school, whether that is a municipality, boards, commissions, state entities, can receive up to $7,500 for the purchase of a battery electric vehicle or $5,000 for the purchase of a plug-in hybrid. We do also have a $750 incentive for electric motorcycles. I think we funded one. Would love to see another one. That would be fun. But for now, most are going for the full vehicles. We allow up to 25 EVs per entity. And for our program's purposes, an entity is going to be the overall organization. So that would be, for example, 25 vehicles for the city of Worcester, not 25 vehicles for the Worcester PD, and another 25 for the fire department, and another 25 for the DPW. We would love to do that if we could, but we do have to have some limits to make sure everyone is able to access these funds. This program does vehicles with a base price of no more than $60,000. That is the absolute base model minimum you can pay to get the vehicle prior to upgrades, add-ons, lights, sirens, wraps, any of those types of things. We also need the vehicles to be light-duty vehicles, and we've set that cutoff at 10,000 pounds. This program has been really successful since 2020. We've funded $7.5 million of vehicles on the road, so hoping to continue to see that going forward. Next up, I'll get more into our 3 EV infrastructure programs. We have Workplace and Fleet, which has 2 flavors. That's going to be funding charging stations available to employees at their place of work or for use by fleet vehicles. So if you participated or are planning to participate in the fleet vehicle program I just mentioned, please also look into the Workplace and Fleet program because we can fund the charging station for that vehicle as well. This program will fund up to 60% of the eligible costs for those charging stations. If you are coming down the workplace track, the primary requirements would be that the location have a minimum of 15 employees who are regularly on site, and that the station will be practically accessible to all of the employees. So no reserving it just for the CEO. Has to be available to absolutely everyone. If you are wanting to come through the fleet vehicle track, the primary requirement is that you have a fleet vehicle with a plug that's light duty that can use the station, and that you will have that vehicle garaged in Massachusetts, and it will be using the station will be reserved for use by that vehicle. The next program I'd like to discuss is the Multi-Unit Dwelling and Campus Program. This is another one with 60% of the eligible costs covered. For this program, again, 2 tracks. Multi-unit dwellings, this is available for any address with a minimum of 5 units on the premises. And that station must be practically accessible to everyone living in all of those units. So if it's an assigned parking space or a deeded parking space, unfortunately, that won't be eligible to come through the program. But if it's a space that can be made available to everyone, then please come to us and let us help you pay for that station. We also fund charging stations at educational campuses with 15 or more students. That is any level of education. That is preschool, that is college, that's continuing ed afterwards. As long as you have 15 students coming on site, we would love to fund a station for you. And again, that station has to be practically accessible to all students, staff, residents as applicable. Our final program is the Public Access Charging Program. This is by far our most popular program, maybe in part because we offer more money per station. This program will fund up to 100% of the eligible costs of a publicly accessible station, so long as which basically means the station has to be located on public property. So for example, a municipal parking lot would be a really great use case for this program. If you would like to put a publicly accessible station on non-public property, we will still fund 80% of the cost of that station. With that extra funding, we do have an expectation that the general public will be able to use the station a minimum of 12 hours a day and 7 days a week. We'd much prefer to see 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. It's not always possible. These cannot be residential locations, so you can't have it at, say, an apartment building and say, well, we'll let the public use it too, and it's also available to the residents. It does have to be sort of a public place. Great use case scenario for that would be a shopping plaza, grocery store, movie theater, any of those kinds of locations. Across these 3 programs, we've done about $20 million of charging stations since 2020, again, so very successful, very popular. We're hoping to see even more going forward. So you may have heard me tossing around the term eligible costs in the previous 2 slides. Just want to get into explaining a bit about that. While we do offer a percentage of funding, it's only against the eligible costs. Eligible costs are things we're willing to pay for. And costs in general fall into 3 categories. Hardware will always be considered an eligible cost. That's going to be the charging station itself, the cables, the mounting kit, the payment module if you are expecting drivers to pay for use of the station, and then shipping and freight on those eligible items. We also have installation costs. These are sometimes considered to be eligible costs by the Mass EVIP program. If you are participating in one of the utility Make Ready programs, which I think we're going to hear about later today, we expect that program will fund installation side costs for you, and therefore we will not contribute funding to it. But if you are not participating in those programs, then you can receive installation funding through Mass EVIP. Finally, we have ineligible costs. These are things that we don't pay for. That's going to be things like the land, the parking space, software subscriptions, warranties, taxes, bollards, shipping and freight on the bollards that we can't pay for, or any other ineligible costs, the electricity consumption, preventative care and maintenance of the stations, and others. We have the right to sort of look at something and say that's not really within the scope. So, for example, at one point we saw an application where they were requesting funding towards an LED billboard that would be on the side of the charging station. We aren't going to pay for that either, even though it's not on this list. But most things that you would normally see will fall into one of these categories, and you'll be able to get a pretty good idea of what kind of incentive to expect. Our Mass EVIP programs do have a few broad requirements across all of our charging programs that I want you all to be aware of. First off, and maybe this is the most important one, the charging station cannot be delivered until the grantee has a Mass DEP signed contract in their hands. Do not accept delivery of the charging station before we have signed the contract on our side. It can ineligibilize your entire project. So please do not make that mistake. If you are applying for installation funding from us as well, please also be aware we can't pay for any work that has begun prior to, again, our signature on the contract. We have some rules for the charging stations themselves. They must support vehicles from multiple manufacturers. So I must be able to charge a Hyundai and a Ford or any other combination on that charging station. Charging stations must be new and they must have Energy Star, UL, and RTL standards. We also have the State Appliance Standards database. Charging stations in Massachusetts have to be listed on this database. We've tried to make it easy for all of you by linking that list through our application. So it's really easy to check and see if the hardware you're looking at is going to qualify. We also have some rules for the parking itself. We must see 1 parking spot reserved as EV only per charging station that we fund. So we're looking to see a sign, a permanently installed sign in front of the station. We would love to see this ground painted as well, though that's not a requirement. We need at least 5% of the charging stations to be built in an accessible way. This is not a handicap-only parking space or a handicap-only charging station, but it is a charging station that has been constructed and installed with the accessibility requirements in mind. So we need to see access aisles, we need to see reach distances intended to, we need to see curb cuts where relevant, there needs to not be a bunch of bollards smack in front of the station that make it hard to get close to it, things of that nature. We also require that all grantees operate and maintain their charging station for 3 years. And of course, other requirements listed in our documents and online, and then of course you can ask us about if it comes forward for you. So I'd like to get a bit into our application process. It can be a little lengthy. We do ask that you allow maybe 2 months to get through all of these steps. First off, applicant needs to gather documents before they apply online. You will need to have a sense of what you want to install and where you want to install it. So you need to fill out the application. It will ask the address, it will ask the hardware, it will ask how much hardware, some other questions. And then you need to provide a quote from your chosen vendor or vendors along with that application. It's also really helpful if you have it to provide a site plan. And if you're participating in the Make Ready programs, they will often ask for a site plan as part of that as well. You apply online, and then we review your application and get back to you within 30 days with follow-up questions. It's extremely rare for us to see an application and not have any follow-up questions, so please be looking for that email to come into your inbox. Once we've got all of our questions answered, have everything you need from we need from you, we've answered any questions you might have for us, we can go ahead and send you your contract documents, also over email. You will, sign and return those documents to us. We'll review, sign, get them back to you, and now you can start your project. Now you can accept delivery of the charging station, break ground, get it into place. Once the project is done, you will submit a payment request to us. We'll review that and release payment again once we've verified we have everything we need from you. So our payment process, just to get into it, because everyone's favorite, everyone likes to get their money. First, you need to, again, submit that payment request form once the project's complete. We only release payment once your project is fully set up. That means the charging station's in the ground, it's functioning, people can use it, but it also means our required signage is in place, required pavement paint is in place, and that the accessibility requirements have been met as well. The payment request will ask for photos and invoices showing your eligible costs. And then once everything is reviewed, we will mail you a check or send an EFT. We'll tell you which to expect at that time. Just very quickly, because I am at time, we have this resource online. It's just a bird's eye overview of our programs. I like to reference it. I do not like to read this to you line by line in this kind of setting, but we have this as a really good tool to sort out which program you might like to come through. And last but not least, here's our website with our links to all of our program pages. This is also where you can apply. These should all be live links if you receive the slides afterwards. And our email address, massevip.massdep@mass.gov, where our team of fabulous grant reviewers, some of whom are here today, can review your grant and answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Yeah, one of the things that has really made Massachusetts a leader in electric vehicles are the programs and incentives that have been offered and sustained really for a decade plus now. So I think we should be really proud of that. And whether you're interested personally or for your organization in one or more of these programs, or know of EV ecosystem partners or customers or residents, we really need your help in raising awareness about this, because we really feel that's half the battle there. And another part of our ecosystem that we're really lucky to have here in Massachusetts involves the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, or Mass CEC for short. And not all states are privileged enough to have an entity that's really innovating and working on pilot programs and able to do things both with vehicle electrification and charging infrastructure the way that Mass CEC is. So I'm pleased to invite Rachel Ackerman, Senior Director with Mass CEC, to talk about some of the great efforts that are going on right now with her organization. And I just heard an ad on the radio for the Mass CEC Fleet Hubs, Rideshare Hubs program. So the word's getting out.
Thank you, Mark, for that plug. And before I start too, I just want to say there's tables in the back, but there is a state table right in the middle. So if you have questions on anything talked about today, all the speakers will have folks in the back. So please come chat with them afterwards. Great. Is this what I use to move forward and backwards? Thank you. Okay, we are going to talk about three different things: technical services, funding, and resources. So, getting into funding and technical support. Really, what Mass EC is a quasi-state agency that focuses on the climate tech within the state. So, we do decarbonization and then economic development. So, really trying to bolster those two things at the same time. A lot of our work sort of looks like holistic services. We try to identify what are the pieces of a problem that haven't been solved yet. How can we get in there and solve them? Is it, money? Is it information? Is it assistance? Is it just sort of connecting different programs the state have into one location? And so you'll see that reflected today where I'm mentioning several other state programs as well. And I'm just talking about what's available for application right now. We have a lot of other work going on. So, getting into this advisory piece, electrification of any kind is very technical. It can be very hard to do, even for just a personal person, trying to buy a light duty vehicle. School bus fleets get even more complicated. So, once the federal government came out with their really large funding several years ago through EPA for school buses, we said we want to make sure fleets know how to take advantage of this funding, not only through the program through more EV trucks that Morgan mentioned, but any other funding opportunities as well, or if they can be self-funded. So here are some examples of participating districts within Massachusetts. The intent is for us to really showcase districts who have geographic diversity, but also, again, this business case diversity. Some of them own their own businesses, some of them use third parties, some of them use multiple third parties, some of them have buses on site, some of them have buses that travel to them. And so, our intent of really trying to provide these free electrification advisory services is so we can take these lessons learned and then share it with all the other school districts across Massachusetts. So hopefully, if you're a municipality or someone who maybe has kids in school or is interested in this, you can see a district up there who says, "Hey, they're kind of like me. They're a city. They're a rural community. They have really dense population. They have buses off site," and we can start to share those lessons learned across the entire state. We also have done a lot of funding through our school bus deployment program. It's not open for applications now, but we will be putting out a notice of intent in the future for future rounds of that funding. And really, a lot of the districts that have gone through advisory program have then gone into the deployment program. So not only do they get a plan of how do we do electrification, where would we put the charging stations, what routes make sense for us, what are the costs, what are the programs, who do I talk to, and then have all of this in hand for decision makers within their district. It's the school board, it's the superintendent, it's the fleet advisor for the school bus group, it's your third party. You have all that information on hand, so when funding does become available, you can be the first one to step up to the plate, say, "We want funding, we want to move forward," and now we have confidence in our decision making to do that. I want to say, besides just having this really holistic support in terms of, soup to nuts, what do we do for our school bus fleet? We're hoping to roll out by the fall a bit more of a piecemeal approach. So if you are a municipality or a third party who says, "We kind of know most of what we're doing, we really don't need all of this hand holding and help, but hey, what if we had a question? What do we do then? Do we call our dealer? Is this the person we should trust?" We're going to have that piecemeal service available too. So you can reach out to us and we will have our group that's been hand holding all these feeds through this be able to answer questions. If you're saying, "Do I need level 2 or level 3 charging here? Is it worth the price? What route should I start with? Is this too conservative or is this the right move?" We're getting this pushback from doing our permitting. Is this what every other municipality goes through? We'll be able to help you answer those questions. We'll act as that neutral third party to just give you information. Another example of this, again, kind of taking even a bigger step back within the medium and heavy duty space, we have a program, Mass Fleet Advisor. And this focuses on all medium and heavy duty vehicles in the state. So, again, very much mirrors exactly what Morgan laid out for the More EV Trucks program. It's for Class 2B all the way through Class 8 vehicles. And what we do is that same electrification analysis. If you were to electrify your fleet, at what point does this make financial sense for you? We don't want businesses taking on additional economic burden. That's not the intent here for electrification. It's to get them a sense of security. It's to make sure that when they do have decision making and there's funding available, they're very confident in that decision making, and helping them understand what are those right vehicle choices for them. So we're supporting 150 fleets across Massachusetts in that work. We've been doing that work for about the last 2 or 3 years. We have some great fleets who've kind of graduated out of that program and have moved on to the second phase, which is procurement. So we will then handhold fleets who are ready to take the step towards procurement to figure out, okay, I'm negotiating with my dealer. How is this going? I'm installing my charging stations. Is this timeline the right timeline we should be thinking about? Do I have all the documents I need? Helping to handhold them through, the DEP or the utility or the more EV incentive programs that were laid out this morning. As you can see, even some of those, as simplified as we try to make them, are still complicated. And so our group will help the fleets go through this. Again, a free service we're providing just to make sure that there's that sense of someone to ask the question to, that you can get the right answer for. And then I want to call out to my colleague Marcel. We'll be chatting specifically about this on a panel later today, so I'll let her get into more of the details on this program. But we are looking to expand this to any fleet across Massachusetts. Before, it had been narrowed down because there had been some utility support for fleet electrification that is now stepping back a bit. And so again, the state is interested in providing support for all fleets across Massachusetts. And so this program will be able to step into that space. And then finally, again, on this, more towards the funding piece and a little bit less on the technical services, we have an open program, Ride for Hire incentives. This is really for Uber, Lyft, and taxi, and recently expanding into livery. These are really high mileage, tend to be moderate income folks in the state. They provide a lot of exposure opportunities for anybody riding in these vehicles as well, for people to understand what's like to be in an electric vehicle. So we see them as a great resource and kind of like the gateway drug to get people into EVs and say this is a great ride. And so we've been running this program from several months now. The rebate amounts, I just wanted to call out on the bottom, have been updated a bit with some additional fund that we were able to receive from a state partner. So increased rebate amounts, the addition of deliveries, which we're really excited to just be opening that up to them. There's a removal of the MSRP cap, which is a dollar value associated with the vehicle when you go to a dealership. And then coming soon, again, really trying to align with the other state programs, trying to do point of sale as well. So when you go and you're using that more EV incentive, you're also getting this incentive at the exact same time. So again, trying to make this as seamless as possible for anybody trying to take advantage of state incentives here. And then Mark gave a great shout out again, trying to think about this holistic services. Logan Airport has some great, charging station for those getting rides to and from the airport, and a couple of the other ones. But we were finding there was gaps in charging stations for these drivers who were trying to electrify. And so what we did, funded through the Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Coordinating Council, is we just put out a press release, and as Mark called out, Elijah had a WBZ interview yesterday that went live this morning. We're having 6 other charging hubs across the entire state. So Western Mass, Central Mass, Southeast Coast, North Shore area, all the way up to Lowell. So we'll have 6 new charging hubs just for these drivers. Messaging is going out from Uber and Lyft and taxi companies when those are going live. Ribbon cuttings and openings of those are going to start in the July timeframe. So really excited that not only do we have the incentives for vehicles, but we also have incentives for the charging stations as well. So resources, I think, is a great thing too. As we're wrapping a program up, it doesn't just end there. We want to make sure everyone can get the lessons learned too. So one of those conversions was our statewide e-bike incentive program, where we gave e-bikes out to low-income residents across the state, as well as safety equipment, and really helped support brick and mortar businesses selling those. So there's a lot of great information here if you're trying to support e-bikes or biking within your community, how to do that safely, how to learn how to do safe rides, maintenance about electric bikes, how to work with your local e-bike retailers and bike retailers to make sure they have the right resources. So all of that is still here, and a great resource to kind of help support that within your community. And then we have a series of 5 charging station programs we're doing the Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Coordinating Council. Those are not meant to duplicate what was already talked about today, sort of, to more muddy the waters. These are meant to be, what are the areas that are really tough for charging stations? And so that's what we're trying to tackle as an agency. So vehicle to grid, mobile charging units that are not grid tied for areas that you have difficulty connecting to a utility at that point of time. A little bit more in that multi-unit dwelling. So people that don't have dedicated parking, how do we support that? An on-street program to have municipalities decide, do we want to have public on-street charging or do we not want to? If we do, what's the public participation process of that look like? And then that Ride Clean Mass Hubs program as well. All these, again, have information we're trying to share out because these are really new areas. So webinar series on the mobile charging, because it's a very technical space. The vehicle to everything is really new. We have a nation leading program that really the states and even other countries are looking at. And so sharing that out to our friends at DPU and the utilities. And then our coming soon materials really this fall. And then early in the spring, we'll be sharing out a series of guidebooks to say, what are we doing next within the state? And finally, we have a great series of websites to look at in terms of information. So if you want to buy your own vehicle, if you're a business, if you are a dealer trying to sell light duty vehicles, you can just go here and find out everything the state can do to help handhold you through what that transition can look like. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Really, really valuable information about the programs that Mass CC is doing and the resources that they're creating from the lessons learned that they gather. And it's really interesting to see how much we're able to support the TNC, the transportation network companies, Uber and Lyft, and other delivery companies. And some data that was presented recently to us from one of the data aggregators around EV charging was that while these drivers represent only about 2% of the miles driven they represent 20% of the charging that's happening at charging stations. So as these grow, it really makes the case for the demand for charging. And I misspoke. I said miles, but represents 2% of the drivers, but an outsized share of the actual vehicle miles traveled. So there's the opportunity to both ensure that they have the charging, because the result will be these will become electric miles traveled, and these will be reducing vehicle emissions on a larger scale. So excited to hear that that work is being done. I just have a couple more slides before we're going to take a really quick break. Kirk will tell you more about that. And I wanted to remind everyone that the work that we do here in practice with policies and programs incentives also serves our greater goal around emissions reduction. And this ties into the work that our agency, EEA, is doing with the clean energy and climate plans. And if you're not familiar with those, CEC for short, we are now working towards a 2035, new 2035 CECP. And this is essentially a roadmap for outlining the policies and strategies that are sector-specific actions that will help to meet our legally mandated greenhouse gas emission limits under the Global Warming Solutions Act. The 2035 CP will be due January 1st, 2028. And so we're informing you about this because we really want this to be an opportunity for you to engage, and as we revisit the suite of transportation decarbonization policies. So we welcome public involvement. Please follow to learn more about this. Follow through EVIC or other ways that you can get engaged with us. And we want to hear your thoughts not only on the vehicles themselves, but on charging and the transportation sector at large, including other modes of transportation. And finally, just a reminder again, if you came in late or you're not registered for this afternoon's in-person EVIC, this is a rare opportunity to engage in person with EVIC. You can still get signed up for that. Visit the registration table or see one of the folks whose badges are labeled staff, and they'll help you get enrolled for that. The regular EVIC meetings happen every month. They're online. They're the first Wednesday of the month, generally 1 to 3 p.m. Via Zoom. And the next one, the next in-person will be in December. We do that twice a year. So please visit the EVIC website. You can get signed up on the mailing list where you can see the schedule, meeting notes, and the resources that we mentioned from EVIC are also on there. And I'll turn it over to Kirk, who just has a few words before we take a really quick break and get kicked off with our two panels.
Okay, thank you. I would like to say, could we just do a quick round of applause for all of our speakers for this morning? Thank you so much for them. And as you hear about everything the state is doing and all these programs that are running, I keep always thinking about how critically important all this work is. And I was in the back room listening, and it's just so amazing to see this room full of folks, everybody leaning in, participating. And so Rachel and Aaron, Morgan and Mark, thank you for all the work you're doing, as well as all of our colleagues in the policy leadership offices that are making all of this possible. So we're going to try to do something very risky. We're going to take a 10-minute break in this meeting. So that means we're going to release 200 people to take a 10-minute break, and then I will bring you back. Now, here's how this is going to go. You can go out, get your drink, stretch. When we come back, I'm just going to start us. So there may be nobody in this room, but I'm just going to start talking. And so you're just going to have to see me up here doing ad lib until you all come back and sit down, because I won't start our next panel until we have folks back in the room. So thank you again for being here. We're going to take about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back together and we'll have our conversation about infrastructure. So thank you so much. Common opportunities. And the entire purpose for those conversations, it's not to sell anything, it's not to gain market share, but it's actually to just collaborate on solutions, because everybody's goal, while common, helping facilitate this transition, everyone's challenges are quite specific, quite unique. And we saw the shift happening in federal policy, and we saw how differently the direction in terms of some of these issues were going at a federal level. And we saw how our states were stepping up and doing more and more work and doing more and more of the right thing. And we brought our innovation exchange folks together. This is higher ed. Next, I see Lisa here from Boston University, who participates in that group. And we said, what do you make of this? What do you make of this big change that's happening? And what do you think about it? Are we going to keep moving forward for the future on this topic? And our higher ed folks, it's a combination of the highest scale private research institutions all the way to public community colleges from different parts around the country. And so we're talking with our higher ed cohort about this big change. What's going to happen? The world's racing forward. What's going to happen here in the United States? And our colleagues in the higher education realm said to us, we have to train our workers for the future. We have to train to win and compete for the future. We have to continue embracing technology and opportunity so we continue moving forward. And I feel like that's been the message we've been hearing from our state colleagues here today too, that we continue moving forward to a future that's going to embrace technology, opportunity, innovation, and equity for all of us. And it's so always, for me, as somebody who's in this field, as a practitioner, as an advocate who's been working with the great support from the Commonwealth for years on this topic here, it's just so heartening for me to hear that from our participants, but also see it reflected back to us, both the work that's happening in the field, but also what's happening at the state level. And do you notice I managed to get us all seated with that story? So now we're going to transition to talk about some more really important stuff. And this is the infrastructure. So our next few sessions are going to be focused on this charging infrastructure theme. Our first panel is going to be expanding EV charging infrastructure across Massachusetts. And this will be about the partnerships, programs, and strategies helping to expand access to reliable and convenient charging across the Commonwealth. It's my pleasure to lead this conversation, to lead this discussion, to introduce Melissa Middleman, who's the Assistant Secretary for Decarbonization at the Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs and Chair of the Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Coordinating Council, EVIC. In her role at EEA, Melissa leads the Commonwealth's climate mitigation team and helps guide policies and initiatives that support Massachusetts decarbonization goals. Her background spans energy policy, sustainable finance, and impact investing, and brings a unique perspective to the opportunities and challenges about transportation electrification in the Commonwealth now and in the future. Melissa, thank you for coming up, and we'll have you lead this panel.
All right. Good morning, and thank you. I am definitely a bit shorter than Kirk here. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm thrilled to be joined by our panelists today. I do just want to start by saying, if it wasn't quite obvious this morning, Massachusetts has big goals when it comes to getting more electric vehicles on our roads. But the number one issue that people cite as the greatest barrier to driving an EV is the availability of charging infrastructure and the range anxiety, or as Mark said, the charging confidence needed to get from point A to point B. I'm proud that in Massachusetts, we've doubled our public charging infrastructure since 2023. And as Mark shared in one of those earlier slides, we rank 4th in the nation in EV chargers per capita and 1st in charger density. That's a testament to many of us in this room who've been working on this project or problem or opportunity for many years, including many of the panelists I have with us here today. So with that, I'd like each of you here to just briefly introduce yourself. And as you do, please share how your organization or you individually contribute to this broader ecosystem of work. I'll start with you, Noel.
Great. Yeah. So Noel Chambers, Director of Energy Efficiency and Electrification at Energy New England. We are a municipal light cooperative. For those of you who don't know or didn't know until Mark mentioned it, there are 41 municipal utility companies in the Commonwealth. They serve 53 cities and towns. We are owned by 6 of them. My work specifically is effectively everything that you would historically think of as being the mass save energy programs. We act as a program administrator for roughly 20 of the communities in Massachusetts, or 20 of the light plants. And as part of that, we also help to operate or run EV education and awareness programs called, well, it's branded as that community drives electric. So we're out there working with residential customers the whole way up to fleet customers in those communities.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Julia Gold. I'm with National Grid. I'm part of our clean transportation team, and I support our policy and regulatory work both in Massachusetts and New York. My team's responsibility is to help shape and develop both the strategies and the customer-facing programs and incentives that we can provide in Massachusetts to help enable and deploy charging infrastructure, as well as programs that help support and guide customers to face the challenges in this work, make it easier for them to get the infrastructure and support that they need, and also develop programs to help reduce the electricity costs of the infrastructure that they're charging. So we have residential programs for off-peak charging, as well as rate programs like our demand charge alternative for fast charging. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm Stephen Tupper, Deputy Director at the Cape Cod Commission, one of the 13 regional planning agencies across Cape Cod. I lead our transportation, climate, and infrastructure programs. And the majority of the time is spent with technical services for our 15 communities. So working both at the regional scale in terms of visioning how to transform our transportation system and electrify our transportation system, and then getting down to the nitty-gritty of how to actually make that happen.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Dan. I'm the East Coast Sales Manager for Autel Energy. We manufacture EV car chargers, both level 2 and 3. My role is to provide all of our partners with support and help them deploy stations in the ground. And then we also do a lot of OCPP compliance testing as well that I'm part of.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Stephanie Ciccarello. I'm the Director of Sustainability for the town of Amherst. I do a lot of things, but in this area, I'm responsible for implementing the transportation opportunities for residents and the municipality itself. So in terms of that, relating to EV charging, I've been responsible for coordinating and overseeing installation of the EV charging systems that we have in the town of Amherst.
Great. Thank you.